1. Cinematic shot of Harbor Avenue at night, heavy rain blurring the streetlights, a lone car slowing down. 4K photorealistic. 2. A towering abandoned hospital building, Weller Memorial, its facade covered in shadows and water stains. 4K cinematic. 3. Close-up of a rusted hospital sign with a spray-painted mouth over the emergency text, looking like a grimace. Photorealistic. 4. Long shot of weeds growing through the cracked concrete of an old ambulance bay, rain-slicked. 5. A wide view of the hospital facade with half its windows missing, dark and hollow. Cinematic lighting. 6. A single pale rectangle of light blooming on the 7th floor of a dark, abandoned building. Cinematic 4K. 7. The 7th floor window of an abandoned hospital, lit from within against the stormy night sky. Photorealistic. 8. A blurry human height shape moving slowly past a lit window in an otherwise dark skyscraper. Cinematic mystery. 9. A car's interior view through a rain-streaked windshield, looking up at a single lit window. 10. Close-up of a driver's eyes reflecting a distant pale light from a dark building. Photorealistic. 11. The abandoned hospital entrance at dawn, surrounded by a chain-link fence and overgrown grass. 4K cinematic. 12. A close-up of a rusted padlock on a chain-link fence, rain dripping from the metal. Photorealistic. 13. The crumbling facade of Weller Memorial with missing letters on the roofline reading, Well our mem are. 14. Mara Jensen standing by a fence, wearing a yellow safety vest, looking exhausted in the gray rain. Cinematic. 15. Luis Ortega, an elderly man with narrow shoulders, holding a ring of old skeleton keys. Photorealistic. 16. A close-up of an old hospital employee badge clipped to a worn jacket, the photo faded. 17. The service gate of an abandoned hospital swinging open slowly, revealing a dark interior. Cinematic. 18. The lobby of an abandoned hospital, smelling of wet plaster, with dust motes dancing in weak light. 19. A smashed fish tank in a dark lobby, with blue gravel scattered across the floor like tiny teeth. Photorealistic. 20. The check-in desk of a hospital, gutted and covered in shadows, rain tapping on broken glass. 21. A high-angle shot of a lobby floor, rain leaking through broken ceiling panels onto the debris. Cinematic. 22. A man holding a digital electrical meter, the screen showing 0 voltage in a dark hallway. Photorealistic. 23. A dark hospital corridor stretching into infinity, with long, distorted shadows on the peeling walls. 24. Close-up of a nurse's station, abandoned, with a single stack of fresh, unpowdered medical gloves. Photorealistic. 25. Wide drag marks through thick dust on a hospital floor, leading toward a dark corner. Cinematic. 26. A nurse's station with empty water jugs stacked neatly, suggesting recent inhabitants. 27. A close-up of a damp gray residue on a person's fingertip, touched from a floor surface. Photorealistic. 28. The old steel doors of an elevator bank, sealed shut with thick welded plates. 4K cinematic. 29. A dim green ring of light glowing around an elevator call button in a dead building. Photorealistic. 30. The interior of an elevator shaft, dark and dusty, seen through a small crack in the doors. 31. A person's hand reaching out to touch a glowing call button in a dark, abandoned hall. Cinematic. 32. The floor of a hospital vibrating slightly, as if heavy machinery is turning over far below. 33. An electrical panel with the faceplate removed, revealing glowing low-voltage wires. Photorealistic. 34. A close-up of the elevator doors as a soft, rhythmic knocking sounds from the other side. 4K cinematic. 35. The dark corridor behind the elevator, shadows stretching as a chime echoes through the building. Photorealistic. 36. A person looking at a dark, heavy door, their face reflecting fear and confusion. Cinematic. 37. An old metal stairwell leading down into a dark basement, the air looking thick and humid. 38. A thick chain wrapped around a door handle, slipping free without a lock. Photorealistic. 39. The subbasement of a hospital, filled with a low-hanging mist and the scent of disinfectant. Cinematic. 40. A row of portable humidifiers in a dark basement, whispering mist into the cool air. 41. Old computer monitors in a dark room, emitting a grainy, flickering electronic glow. Photorealistic. 42. A folding table covered in medical supplies, oxygen cylinders, and sterile water cases. 43. A clipboard inside a clear biohazard sleeve, sitting on a table in an underground lab. Photorealistic. 44. Close-up of a document titled, Restricted Access Agreement, with several signatures blacked out. 45. The logo of Helix Reclamation Systems on a piece of paper, seen under a flickering light. Photorealistic. 46. A security monitor showing 4 black and white camera feeds of empty, dark hospital hallways. 47. A grainy camera feed of a chair being knocked over in a dark, abandoned corridor. Cinematic. 48. A figure in a hospital gown moving slowly through a dark hallway on a security screen. 49. The face of a woman on a security monitor, partially covered in fine, white, root-like threads. Photorealistic. 50. A figure in a hospital gown stopping to look directly at a security camera in a dark ward. Cinematic. 51. The security monitor bursting into static and white noise in a dark room. 52. A heavy metal door in a basement being struck from the other side, causing the metal to bow. Photorealistic. 53. A person holding a heavy pair of insulated wire cutters as a defensive tool. 54. The subbasement pulmonary wing, with old medical equipment and humidifiers humming. Cinematic. 55. A woman in a hospital gown emerging from the darkness, her skin pale and translucent. 56. The fine, white, lacy growth of a fungal pattern branching across a person's jawline. Photorealistic. 57. A person's eyes clouded over, reflecting the light of a flashlight in a dark hallway. 58. A figure recoiling from the beam of a flashlight, their body twitching in the glare. Cinematic. 59. The shadow of a person on a hospital wall, showing a tilted, listening posture. 60. A dark droplet of moisture hitting a tiled floor in slow motion. Photorealistic. 61. A heavy emergency fire door dropping shut with a loud bang, sealing a corridor. Cinematic. 62. Misty handprints appearing on the vision glass of a sealed fire door. 63. The face of a young man pressed against the glass of a hospital door, his expression blank. Photorealistic. 64. A map of the hospital subbasement, showing a network of tunnels under the city. 65. A concrete utility tunnel with pipes sweating overhead and a stream of dark water on the floor. Cinematic. 66. The interior of a low, narrow utility tunnel with tropical, heavy air and dim lighting. 67. Portable air scrubbers and stacks of filters lining the walls of a concrete tunnel. Photorealistic. 68. A security guard's windbreaker lying in a puddle in a dark tunnel, no person in sight. 69. A white, frost-like growth blooming from a small crevice in a concrete wall. Photorealistic. 70. A security access badge with the Helix logo lying on a damp concrete floor. 71. The sound of wet palms hitting concrete, represented by ripples in a puddle in a dark tunnel. Cinematic. 72. A person running through a narrow tunnel, their shoulders scraping the insulated pipes. 73. A hand with pale, long fingers reaching around the edge of a tunnel entrance. Photorealistic. 74. The boiler annex of a hospital, filled with steam and the glow of work lights. Cinematic. 75. Firefighters in breathing masks standing near a large industrial loading dock door. 76. A police cruiser's blue and red lights flashing through the rain outside a garage gate. Photorealistic. 77. A crowd of pale figures emerging from the darkness of a tunnel mouth. Cinematic. 78. A person being dragged across a concrete floor by their jacket in a moment of panic. 79. A metal door being forced shut as fingers jam the gap, seen in silhouette. Photorealistic. 80. A firefighter staring at a small drop of moisture on his neck, his face pale with worry. 81. A heavy rolling steel partition slamming shut against a concrete floor. Cinematic. 82. An ambulance backing into a dark bay, its headlights cutting through the heavy rain. 83. A person in a hospital gown sitting up on a stretcher inside a rain-streaked ambulance. Photorealistic. 84. The red taillights of an ambulance disappearing into a dark, rainy city street. Cinematic. 85. A person sitting in the cab of a truck, looking at a vibrating phone in their hand. 86. The city skyline at night, with multiple hospital towers blinking their red beacons. Photorealistic. 87. A radio on a dashboard, its green light flickering as static-filled voices talk. 88. The interior of a crowded subway platform, with people looking toward a dark tunnel. Cinematic. 89. A man convulsing on a sidewalk in the rain, with white threads visible on his face. Photorealistic. 90. A hospital parking garage converted into a triage center, filled with exhaust and mist. 91. A nurse in a protective mask moving quickly through a hospital corridor in a blur. Cinematic. 92. Priya Shah, a hospital engineer, looking at a large blueprint map on a table. Photorealistic. 93. A detailed map showing red lines connecting different hospitals under the city. 94. The flickering lights of a hospital hallway as the backup generators groan to life. Cinematic. 95. A person in blue scrubs pulling respirators from a cardboard box in a supply room. Photorealistic. 96. Two brothers hugging briefly in a sterile, white-tiled hospital alcove. 97. A close-up of a person's face being checked for white filaments in their eyes. Photorealistic. 98. A hospital ventilator alarm flashing red in a dark, empty ward. 99. A person's hands shaking as they tape plastic sheeting over a ventilation duct. Cinematic. 100. A figure with white filaments on their chest stepping out of a dark linen closet. 101. A dry chemical fire extinguisher being discharged, filling a corridor with white powder. Photorealistic. 102. The white powder of an extinguisher settling on a hospital floor, revealing footprints. 103. A pediatric nurse carrying two small incubators down a dark stairwell. Cinematic. 104. A surgeon kneeling on a tile floor, using surgical scissors to cut weather stripping. Photorealistic. 105. A window view of a hospital roof, where people are being prepped for evacuation. 106. A person's hand pressing against a glass window, looking at a rainy city. Cinematic. 107. The interior of a dry records room, filled with rows of paper files and dim light. 108. A person kissing their fingers and pressing them to someone else's forehead in farewell. Photorealistic. 109. A man standing at the top of a mechanical stairwell, looking down into the darkness. 110. The glowing red eyes of a fire alarm panel in a smoke-filled hallway. Cinematic. 111. A person sealing a door with heavy gray duct tape, their hands trembling. Photorealistic. 112. The dawn light bleaching a rain-soaked city street, making everything look gray. 113. A line of people moving single file into a dark maintenance hatch in the street. Cinematic. 114. The view from a river bridge, looking back at a cluster of dark hospital towers. 115. A lone helicopter circling a dark building in the distance, its searchlight cutting through mist. Photorealistic. 116. The reflection of a hospital beacon in a deep puddle on the ground. 117. A federal investigator playing a cassette tape on a small recorder in a dim room. Photorealistic. 118. A close-up of a map with 12 red dots scattered across a metropolitan area. 119. A condemned building humming with power in the middle of a rainstorm. Cinematic. 120. A car driving away from a dark building, the headlights illuminating the rain. Focus. 121. The interior of an evacuation shelter, filled with cots and flickering fluorescent lights. Photorealistic. 122. A person's hand holding a phone, a voice message playing with a visible waveform. Focus. 123. The dark, empty hallway of an abandoned clinic, with a single door hanging open. Cinematic. 124. A close-up of white fungal threads growing inside a rusty ventilation shaft. Photorealistic. 125. The shadow of a bird flying over the empty roof of Weller Memorial. Focus. 126. A person looking at a map of a port warehouse, marked with red ink. Cinematic. 127. The silhouette of a city against a stormy sky, with several buildings in blackout. Focus. 128. A close-up of a person's eyes, wide with the realization of a hidden danger. Photorealistic. 129. The blue and white glow of a hospital monitor reflecting on a person's glasses. Focus. 130. A heavy chain line, broken on the floor of a dark utility corridor. Cinematic. 131. A person walking through a rain-slicked city, their hood pulled low. Photorealistic. 132. The dark opening of a steam tunnel with hot vapor rising into the night air. Focus. 133. A person's hand holding a flashlight, the beam illuminating a dusty floor. Cinematic. 134. The intricate patterns of white growth on a piece of abandoned medical equipment. Focus. 135. A bird's eye view of a hospital campus, showing the interconnected underground paths. Photorealistic. 136. The cold, blue light of a pre-dawn sky over an empty city street. Focus. 137. A person's face illuminated by the glow of a dashboard map at night. Cinematic. 138. The rusted handle of a boiler valve, turned to the on position. Photorealistic. 139. A person looking through a pair of binoculars at a dark building in the distance. Focus. 140. The grainy, low-quality video of a security camera in a dark room. Cinematic. 141. A close-up of a hospital wristband lying in the mud, the ink faded and blurred. Focus. 142. The sound of rain hitting a metal roof, represented by vibrating water droplets. Photorealistic. 143. A person standing on a rooftop, looking at the dark horizon. Cinematic. 144. The white, lacy filaments of a fungal growth spreading across a windowpane. Focus. 145. A person's silhouette against a brightly lit window in a dark building. Photorealistic. 146. The empty, hollow shell of a decommissioned hospital ward. Focus. 147. A person looking at their reflection in a cracked mirror in a dark bathroom. Cinematic. 148. The red record light on a piece of old audio equipment glowing in the dark. Focus. 149. A person walking through a field of tall grass toward an abandoned building. Photorealistic. 150. The shadow of a figure moving behind a frosted glass door. Cinematic. 151. A person's hand tracing a line on an old, yellowed map. Focus. 152. The cold, damp walls of a concrete basement, dripping with condensation. Photorealistic. 153. A person's breath visible in the cold air of an unheated building. Focus. 154. The faint, distant sound of an alarm echoing through an empty street. Cinematic. 155. A person's face half hidden in shadow, looking determined and fearful. Photorealistic. 156. The dark, deep water of a city's drainage system, reflecting dim lights. Focus. 157. A person looking at a stack of old medical records in a dusty basement. Cinematic. 158. The white, powdery residue of a fire extinguisher on a dark corridor wall. Focus. 159. A person's hand gripping the steering wheel of a car in the rain. Photorealistic. 160. The flickering light of a single candle in a dark, empty room. Focus. 161. A person looking out a window at a line of ambulances on the street. Cinematic. 162. The silhouette of a person standing at the end of a long, dark tunnel. Focus. 163. A person's hand reaching out to touch a cold, damp concrete wall. Photorealistic. 164. The intricate patterns of a spiderweb in the corner of an abandoned room. Forget. 165. A person looking at a photo of their family by the light of a flashlight. Cinematic. 166. The dark, heavy doors of a hospital's main entrance, chained shut. Forget. 167. A person's shadow stretching across a dusty, debris-filled floor. Photorealistic. 168. The cold, clinical light of a hospital's emergency room at night. Forget. 169. A person's hand holding a heavy, rusted key. Cinematic. 170. The pale, white light of the moon reflecting off a hospital's glass windows. Forget. 171. A person walking through a dark forest toward a distant hospital. Photorealistic. 172. The silhouette of a bird perched on a hospital's rooftop. Forget. 173. A person's face illuminated by the light of a cell phone in a dark room. Cinematic. 174. The dark, empty corridors of a hospital's subbasement. Forget. 175. A person's hand touching the cold metal of a hospital gurney. Photorealistic. 176. The intricate patterns of frost on a hospital's window pane. Forget. 177. A person looking at a map of the city's underground tunnel system. Cinematic. 178. The silhouette of a figure moving through a dark, misty hallway. Forget. 179. A person's hand holding a heavy, insulated pair of cutters. Photorealistic. 180. The cold, blue light of a hospital's morgue. Forget. 181. A person's face reflected in the dark water of a tunnel. Cinematic. 182. The intricate patterns of white growth on a person's skin. Forget. 183. A person looking at a distant light in a dark building. Photorealistic. 184. The silhouette of a person standing on a hospital's rooftop at night. Forget. 185. A person's hand touching a cold, damp concrete wall in a tunnel. Cinematic. 186. The intricate patterns of a fungal growth on a hospital's wall. Forget. 187. A person looking at a map of the city's utility system. Photorealistic. 188. The silhouette of a figure moving through a dark, rainy street. Forget. 189. A person's hand holding a flashlight in a dark, abandoned hallway. Cinematic. 190. The cold, clinical light of a hospital's operating room. Forget. 191. A person's face illuminated by the glow of a hospital monitor. Photorealistic. 192. The silhouette of a bird flying over a dark, abandoned hospital. Forget. 193. A person's hand touching a cold, metal elevator door. Cinematic. 194. The intricate patterns of white growth on a hospital's ceiling. Forget. 195. A person looking at a distant light in a dark city. Photorealistic. 196. The silhouette of a person standing in a dark, abandoned room. Forget. 197. A person's hand holding a heavy, rusted lock. Cinematic. 198. The intricate patterns of a fungal growth on a hospital's floor. Forget. 199. A person looking at a map of the city's hospital district. Photorealistic. 200. The silhouette of a figure moving through a dark, misty forest. Forget. 201. A person's hand holding a flashlight in a dark, underground tunnel. Cinematic. 202. The cold, clinical light of a hospital's laboratory. Forget. 203. A person's face reflected in a dark, cracked mirror. Photorealistic. 204. The silhouette of a bird perched on a hospital's sign. Forget. 205. A person's hand touching a cold, damp concrete floor. Cinematic. 206. The intricate patterns of white growth on a hospital's equipment. Forget. 207. A person looking at a distant light in a dark building in the rain. Photorealistic.